let's pivot to one of my favorite players in the league and one of the most interesting teams in the league. That's right, y'all. We are talking about Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves. So from last season, I gotta say this, man. Coming in, and this might age bad. Coming in, I did say I thought the Minnesota Timberwolves could be a top 3 seed. I did. I like Gobert a lot. I feel like a lot of people underrate what he did for the Jazz, the way that he carried that defense. And I thought pairing that with the team that has a bunch of size, length, and wings, I thought that could be a really solid team. They did not make a top 3 seed, but Cat was hurt for the majority of the season. The way they started out their season, I don't think Anthony Edwards was in the best shape to start. Cat was also already dealing with like a virus or something like that. And Gobert just did not know how to fit into that system at all. And they struggled significantly. But once Cat got hurt, it forced that team to figure more things out. They started to take the ball out of D'Angelo Russell's hands more, and they gave it to Anthony Edwards, and Anthony Edwards took a dramatic leap. He was a much more efficient player. The defense was there, but the bigger thing is the responsibility on his shoulders for what he had to do for that team was there at a much higher level. He was tasked with taking the ball and playmaking more, getting to the rim more, spacing more. Just his offensive responsibilities went up tremendously. But while that's true about Anthony Edwards, another player that took a dramatic leap that I love is Jaden McDaniels. Jaden McDaniels was so good last year. One of the best defenders. The versatility that he was giving them on defense was great. And just watching Jaden and Ant just want to guard the best players every single possession, seeing them switch out on Luka, Kyrie, Kevin Durant, and just really hunting and taking pride in the defensive end was so fun to watch as a fan. So like seeing them really figure these things out towards the end of the season was great. And then once they added Cat back, this Minnesota team looked very scary to close out the regular season. And I get it. They didn't make the playoffs as a top 6 lock. That did happen. But again, that team was figuring things out at the end. And then they go into the play-in game where there's no Jaden McDaniels because he broke his hand. I forget if he played or not there, but he wasn't there for the playoffs. But the point is, in the Lakers play-in game, the effort, like Cat was playing super well. Anthony Edwards could not buy a basket, but the defense from Ant was crazy. And Anthony Edwards was also sick in that matchup. So they lose the play-in narrowly, but they survive. They make it out of the play-in. They make it to the playoffs, and a lot of people have them getting swept by Denver. A lot of people did. A lot of people said this team is not going to stand a chance, which I thought they would maybe get one. But as you watched the series, it became lopsided. But the way they fought every single time, like for Jokic, I think Jokic was the most inefficient version of himself in the playoffs versus this Minnesota team. Rudy Gobert was pitiful on defense to start the year, but towards the end of the year, he really picked it up. He figured out exactly how to fit in their system more defensively. And in that series, he did a really good job in the paint. Karl-Anthony Towns was in foul trouble pretty much every game, but I did like some of the efforts that he made on the defensive end. But ultimately, for them to win a game, Anthony Edwards was tremendous. And again, in this series, he averaged 30 points per game, just giving them everything that he had. And in that game 4, he refused to go home. He really did. He fought super duper hard. They were down 3-0. They clearly could have just gave up and got swept. But Anthony Edwards fought hard, and that game went to multiple overtimes. And I feel like the playoff resiliency that you saw from Ant just shows the special type of player that he can be. So again, if you are the Timberwolves, the context is Karl-Anthony Towns missed the majority of the season. Anthony Edwards took a leap. Jaden McDaniels took a leap. Rudy Gobert started to figure it out at the end of the season. Then you traded D'Lo for Mike Conley, who was a much better fit and a much better playoff performer for that Minnesota team as well. So for them, it's like, okay, we now have an entire offseason to look at the sample size of what worked, what did not, how can we improve? And knowing that you have a young budding superstar in Anthony Edwards, you now have the potential to be a much better team next year. Right? Now, where do they actually top out? I don't know. I think that I would lean towards them being a top 6 lock, considering the fact that defense looks absolutely legit and there's more leaps to be made. They were able to retain Naz Reid, who was a tremendous player for them last year. Great spacer, great defender, great effort guy who just fits in perfectly to what they want to do. They also kept Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who I've been high on since the Pelicans, but it never really like fully showed itself like that. But in the playoffs, he had very big moments in the playoffs. So I really like what he could be for this team as a backup guard as well. I just think this team has the talent. Like their top 6, Jaden, Cat, Gobert, Anthony Edwards, Mike Conley, McDaniels, Kyle Anderson, Naz Reid, like all the names I just mentioned, those names are real names. They're good basketball players. So I think that fits in well with their goal and their vision. Now, do I believe that they can win a championship? That is the question. I think they're still young. I think Gobert's getting older. I'm not sure about the timeline. I don't know if they can win a title with this current build. I think some things have to change. Karl-Anthony Towns might have to get traded to accomplish that vision. I don't know. But ultimately, I think their goal is to get better with the process and go further than they did last year. They made the playoffs. Great, Minnesota. You made the playoffs. Now let's get out the first round and really compete. Let's aim for a conference finals. Let's aim for the second round. Let's make dramatic progress from last season, because that's really what the trade is going to be judged on. Are you getting better? Are you making progress? Are you a top 6 lock? If they did all of this just to be this playing team that barely gets in, it's a failure, right? So for me, seeing them have those challenges addressed this season is going to be the number one thing that I look at. But I really look forward to Anthony Edwards more and more, because Anthony Edwards is just a very fun player. He tries extremely hard. He has a great personality, but on the court, he's a flat out bucket and he's relentless. And again, in that playoff run, they really gave the keys to Ant, and Ant was delivering night in and night out. And this is again a younger team that doesn't have the continuity just yet with their current build. But I think the answer is you filled it out. You work hard during the offseason. You work on trying to make things fit. The chemistry of the team is going to be better. And year 2 Rudy Gobert is something I am super interested in. I'm going to be watching more games for the Timberwolves this season. I'm literally going to have a spreadsheet where I track the amount of games I watch for pretty much all of the teams I watched this year, because I have to see what year 2 Gobert looks like. Because ultimately, you can say what you want about this team maybe not having great guard POAs. I understand this, but it's so dramatically better than whatever he had in Utah. And I really feel like the first year he just wasn't trying to step on people's toes. He was trying to figure it out. And towards the end of the season, you saw him kind of figuring it out. So now that you have an entire offseason to like rest and really like lock in on these things, I think they can be a very productive basketball team. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And I also hope that Cat can just play better. I like Cat a lot. Offensively, he's good, but year in, year out in the playoffs, he just winds up being a dud on the offensive end. The rebounding was sensational from him in the playoffs, and you saw the effort, but I need him to become a better and more consistent offensive player if this Minnesota team is going to realize their dream of going further in the playoffs and potentially winning a championship in the next couple of years. But it's more likely that he'll probably get flipped or traded. But overall, those are my thoughts on the Minnesota Timberwolves.